So anymore today, it seems like people are getting more and more into finesse techniques with micro fishing and everything coming about, when in reality we've been doing it all along with our finesse techniques as bass fishermen. And probably the most popular finesse technique out there in the world today, out of all of the finesse baits out there, probably the most popular is going to be a Z-Man TRD, or the Ned Rig as people call it. There's all kinds of different models out there. Every company's tried to recreate it, but in my personal opinion, there's no better one than the actual Z-Man TRD. So what I want to do today is I want to break down everything that I know about TRD fishing when it comes to Ned Rig fishing, because I live with a Ned Rig on my deck, whether I am on the Tennessee River, whether I am on my home water of Lake Erie. You know, I bed fish for smallmouth with a TRD for like 2 months out of the year, and I've really began to hone in my techniques as far as the hooks, the line, the two rods that I like to use, and the different situations in which I'm going to throw those rods. I even throw 3 different rods depending on where I'm at in the country. The hooks that I'm going to use for the different size TRDs that I like to use, I'm going to break it all down here so you guys can have a little bit better idea knowing where you're going, and if you pick up a TRD, knowing what kind of hooks you're going to want to throw, what kind of baits you're going to use, and what rod you're going to throw it on for the body of water that you happen to be fishing during the time of year that you're fishing. So that's all going to start right now. So I really only throw 3 TRD style baits. That's right, I only throw 3. There's no reason for me to throw any other ones. I like the Finesse TRD, the original. I like it in a few different colors. I'll have those linked down below along with all the gear that I usually talk about. But the Deal and Drew's Craw are pretty much the only 2 in green pumpkin. 3 that I throw, hands down. I like the Deal when I'm fishing clear water, especially if there's bait fish around. I like green pumpkin when I know I'm fishing around crayfish type situations and the water might be slightly stained. And then Drew's Craw is just one that I pick up when I think I need a more natural looking Deal when I'm fishing for largemouth. I really like the Deal for smallmouth. I don't throw the Deal as much for largemouth. That's when I lean more toward the green pumpkin and Drew's Craw. The other one that I like to throw is a big TRD. That's when I get around bigger largemouth where I think I'm going to be having an actual opportunity at some bigger size fish. I will upgrade to that big TRD, especially if I'm fishing a silty bottom, because that big TRD will stick out of the water a little bit. And don't mistake the big TRD for like the mega TRD. This is just like the 4-inch one, right? Yeah, 4-inch one. Same color pattern, but I really only throw Drew's Craw and green pumpkin for that one because I don't ever throw the big TRD for smallmouth. I only throw it for largemouth. It's just kind of how I go. I just want a little bit beefier presentation. And then a sneaky one that guys don't really know about, and for some reason nobody seems to throw, is going to be a Z-Man Ticklers. It is a Ned Rig style bait, and it's basically a hula stick that's shrunken down. And all it is it's a Ned Rig that has 4 tentacles and a tapered body. And you might ask, well, John, why would you even throw that if it's just a Ned Rig with 4 tentacles and a tapered body? Here's why I throw it. Because a lot of times when smallmouth get shallow, they get really shallow, and they get shallow on rocky bottoms. And what is the one common thing that everybody knows about throwing a TRD or a Ned Rig? You lose them when you get around rock. It's just how that gig goes. You throw it up in there, they get wedged. If there's any size rock, it gets caught in there, and it's a pain in the nuts to try to get them back out. You have to get up there, you end up blowing up the spot. Well, you know, these ticklers come with, like I said, 4 tentacles on the back, but if you take and rig that sucker upside down so the tentacles are towards the head of the hook, they act as a parachute. And what they do is they parachute down and they kind of act like a tripod, and that they hold it up and give it more surface area to keep it from getting hung up. And if you don't believe me, try this, because the way it sits, it just gives it a softer fall so it doesn't wedge into the rocks. A Ned Rig typically falls faster and it has a narrow head, so it gets wedged in there really, really easily. But when you're throwing the ticklers upside down, it sinks like a parachute, sits on the bottom, and it just sits on the edge of stuff. So when you hop it, it like parachutes up and then flutters back down. And it's a finesse presentation that those fish will absolutely hammer, especially up shallow, because it just has a different fall rate than anything else anybody's throwing out there. But again, I like those in the exact same colors. But those are the 3 that I'm going to throw. I keep it really, really simple when it comes to TRD fishing or my finesse fishing style, because I don't think making differences as far as throwing a TRD bugs or throwing a TRD craw is really going to make that big of a difference. If you're already downsizing to that size presentation, I feel like the opportunities there, those fish are going to eat it no matter what. It's kind of like flipping, you know, a palmetto bug versus a hella craw or something. If you're flipping it, they're probably just going to eat it anyway. It's the presentation that does it. And that's why I stick with those 3 baits for the situations at hand. I rig those up on a few different hook options, which is what I want to talk about next, because hooks are a critical role when you're fishing with these size baits, because it's a fine line. You want a finesse hook that is going to be light wire and get good penetration and hold those fish, but you also want a beefy enough hook that if you hook a 4, 5, 6, 7 pound smallmouth, it's going to hold up. Same thing with a big largemouth. You want to have enough gap there that you actually hook those fish and are able to land them. And so there's a few different hooks that I like to throw. The first one that I'd like to throw is an owner blockhead. It is probably one of the best stock Ned Rig hooks out of the package I've ever used. I myself take the owner blockhead hook. I take that owner hook and I get a size bigger and I pour my own heads, so I get a little bit bigger hook on there. But if you don't have your own pouring stuff and you just want to buy them right out the box, that owner blockhead is by far, hands down, if I could only choose one, that's the one I'm going to go with. You just straight up don't lose fish on it. It's got that O'Shaughnessy style bend in there. Once you get one of those fish on there, it does not come off, and you can take that to the bank. The other hook that I like to throw is, what is the name of this one? Is a Ned Locks is what they call it, and it's basically an EWG style hook for a Ned Rig. This is what I'm going to throw if I'm fishing around cover, if there's any wood down there. It's basically a Texas rig style Ned Rig head, and that just makes it weedless, so that way you don't have that open exposed hook getting caught up in all the wood on the bottom and whatnot. Because a TRD is a great option around laydowns and around logs and whatnot when those fish are really finicky, or if you're fishing for smaller size fish. I know a lot of times if you break out a Ned Rig, not all of us are fishing tournaments where 20 pounds wins. A lot of us are fishing places where 7 to 12 pounds win, and so that's when you want to get those downsized presentations. So that is going to be another time that I like to throw that Ned Locks. And then the other hook that I like to throw is if you don't pour your own head and you need a bigger size head. Z-Man also has an SMH head that Brian Latimer came out with a little while ago. They make it an 1/8, 3/16 and a quarter. I will throw that with my big TRD because it's basically, with that Z-Man plastic, it's going to stand straight up anyway, so the head doesn't necessarily make a whole bunch of a difference, but I like the light wire hook that they put in here because it holds up extremely well. I've caught some giant fish on it, gets good penetration, and it holds well, and it has that patented Z-Man keeper on there, that just little wire bend, so it's easy to put the TRDs on and off. One tip that I do want to talk about is if you're fishing a TRD, take some super glue with you, because whenever you thread it onto your hook, if you put a little dab of super glue at the head, the only time you'll ever have to change it is if you lose it. It is just something that it will not come off of there. I've caught hundreds of smallmouth in a row on these baits when I have the head super glued on there when I'm bed fishing for them. Trust me, the only time you ever need to change it is when you lose one. That's the only time. So one of the other critical things that I want to talk about is the rods. I have 2 rods that I fish with them. One is for bed fishing and one is for casting for them. Actually, I have 3 rods. Another one is for casting for them. So I have 3 rods that I like to fish. The one is a 7-foot drop shot rod. I'll have them all linked down below because sometimes the actions and the sizes confuse me. I know what I like and I'll relay it to you, but it's a softer spinning rod. It's a 7-foot medium light. It's an Arc Invoker Pro, and what it is it just has more of a parabolic bend to it. And I like that when I'm bed fishing because you're often in close quarters. So if you're fishing, if you're not casting, if you're pitching, I like a softer rod because a lot of times with a heavier rod, you skin hook those fish, you try to jack them too hard, you get them near the boat, you bend the hook, you pull the hook out, etc. So I go with a 7-foot medium light when I'm fishing close quarters. If I'm casting a light near a TRD, and then I'm going to go to a 7-1 Arc Essence. It has a little bit more backbone. I can get that better hook penetration because sometimes those smallmouth, they have crushers on them. Largemouth do too. If you get a big largemouth that eats it to its crushers, that's pretty tough to penetrate unless you actually get some ass behind your hook. Best way to put it. So when I cast it out with that 7-1 Arc Invoker Pro, I'm going to reel into them, and it has a little bit more backbone to really put that hook home, but it also has a soft enough body that it's not going to pull the hook out of those fish. And so that's when I like to throw that one. And then when I like to throw these big TRDs, I go to a 7.6 medium light. It's an Arc Essence as well. And the reason I like that is because I can make longer casts with it. It has a little bit more length to control the weight of that bigger TRD. And I get a little bit more backbone to drive that hook home. Same reason that I like that 7.1 Essence. It's just got a little bit more backbone. But I like that 7.6 because it gives me a little bit more leverage for some of those bigger largemouth that I hook. I can really use that rod to pull those fish around a little bit more while getting more action built into that rod with it being a little bit longer. So it's kind of the same deal as that 7-foot Arc Invoker Pro, but I have it in a 7.6 with a little bit more backbone in it. It's a rod I like when I'm throwing those big TRDs. I really love it when I'm fishing specific targets for pressured fish, hard spots, etc. When I'm, scoping those fish, I love that bigger TRD. But those are the rods that I like to throw. The line is going to be always the same, is going to be that 10 to 12 pound P line. It's their spinning rod. It's Spin-X braid. I like that because it's a really thin diameter. I can really get a long cast with it. And then I pair that with a P-line tactical fluorocarbon. If I'm throwing the smaller ones, I'll go with a 7 pound. As soon as I start to get into these bigger ones, I go to 10 pound. That's pretty much the gist of it. I won't go any higher or any lower. 7 pound seems to be a good all around, 7 to 8 pound. As far as putting a reel on those rods, I like a 3000 series reel because it has a smoother drag. I can pick up line a lot faster because a lot of times when they pick up those light baits, you really can't feel it a lot of times. Like I've had bites where sometimes you cast that light bait out there, that, you know, that 32nd ounce TRD, and you're just letting it bounce off the bottom and you pick up and there's nothing. There's just slack. And so I have to use that bigger reel to try to catch up to those fish a little bit faster. And this is where most people mess up with a Ned rig, is they try to set the hook. Don't set the hook. Reel and then lean on them. It's kind of the same. It's kind of like a Carolina rig bite. As far as when you reel with a Carolina rig, you just lean to the side to hook them. Same deal with a Ned rig, except I'm going to reel and lean back because that hook is, you know, on a jig head. So you want to get that upward motion to put it in the roof of their mouth where you'll land every single one of those fish. But again, that hook set is just going to reel. As soon as it starts to tighten up, you lean because it's that finesse wire hook. It's going to go right into the roof of their mouth and you'll land every single one of them, especially with those tips that I talked about right there. Because those are the baits that I like. Those are the rods, the reels that I like. So another great finesse option is going to be a drop shot. And I'll have a video linked up here where I talk about what I wish somebody would have told me about fishing a drop shot. It's not going to be a video you're going to want to miss because a drop shot is also another phenomenal bait. So go ahead and give these tips a try. Get out there on the water. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless, and I hope to see you guys out there.